This is first knowledge. The great struggle for power to rule the world. What do the Nazi Party, and the KKK, and the Spanish priest or Roman Catholic clergy person have in common? Well, they all play a huge role in trying to rule the world. The Middle Ages, also known as the medieval period, was a historical period that lasted from the 5th to the 15th century. It is divided into three main periods: the early Middle Ages, 5th-10th centuries, the High Middle Ages, 11th-13th centuries, and the Late Middle Ages, 14th-15th centuries. During the Middle Ages, Europe saw significant political, social, and cultural changes. The Roman Empire had collapsed, and various Germanic and other tribes began to form their own kingdoms and empires. The period was marked by the development of feudalism, which was a social system where lords or nobles granted land to vassals in exchange for loyalty in military service. Religion played a significant role in medieval life, with the Roman Catholic Church being the dominant institution. Monks and nuns lived in monasteries and convents, and the church was heavily involved in education and intellectual life. The Crusades, a series of religious wars fought between Christian Europe and Muslim powers in the Holy Land, also occurred during the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages saw significant advancements in art, architecture, and literature, with the Gothic style emerging in the High Middle Ages. The period also saw the birth of universities, which became centers of learning and intellectual thought. Overall, the Middle Ages was a complex and fascinating period in European history, marked by significant changes and advancements. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, various Germanic and other tribes began to establish their own kingdoms and empires in the territories formerly under Roman control. Other notable successor states included the Kingdom of the Lombards in Italy, the Kingdom of the Vandals in North Africa, and the Kingdom of the Anglo-Saxons in England. Over time, many of these kingdoms and empires would eventually give way to larger, more centralized states, such as France, Germany, and Spain. The Moors were Muslims of Arab and Berber descent who were black and conquered much of the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Spain and Portugal, in the 8th century CE. They established a powerful Islamic state called Al-Andalus and ruled over the region for nearly 800 years, until the Catholic monarchs of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella, completed the Reconquista by capturing the last Muslim stronghold of Granada in 1492. During their rule in Al-Andalus, the Moors made significant contributions to the fields of science, mathematics, architecture, and art. They also allowed for a degree of religious and cultural tolerance that was rare in Europe at the time, with Christians and Jews living under Muslim rule and enjoying some degree of autonomy. The Moors were not destroyed, but rather gradually pushed back and eventually expelled from the Iberian Peninsula as a result of the Reconquista, a long period of Christian reconquest that lasted from the 11th to the 15th century. The Reconquista began in the 11th century when Christian kingdoms in the north of Spain began to launch a series of military campaigns against the Moors in the south. These campaigns were initially small-scale and focused on capturing territory and fortresses, but over time, they grew in size and scope, with larger armies engaging in more significant battles. One of the key turning points in the Reconquista was the capture of the city of Toledo in 1085 by Alfonso VI, King of Castile. This gave the Christian kingdoms a foothold in the heart of Muslim-controlled Spain and paved the way for further advances. Over the next several centuries, the Christian kingdoms continued to gain ground, capturing key cities and territories, including Córdoba, Seville, and Granada. The final blow to the Moorish presence in Spain came in 1492, when the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella captured the last Muslim stronghold of Granada, and completed the Reconquista. After the Reconquista, the Spanish Inquisition was established to enforce religious conformity, and many Muslims and Jews were forced to convert to Christianity or leave the country. During the period of the Spanish Inquisition, Muslims and Jews who did not leave Spain were forced to convert to Christianity or faced persecution and expulsion. These forced conversions were known as conversos or New Christians. The Inquisition was established in 1478 by Ferdinand and Isabella, the same monarchs who completed the Reconquista. Its purpose was to root out and punish people who were suspected of practicing their former religion in secret, particularly Muslims and Jews who had converted to Christianity, but were suspected of not fully embracing their new faith. Those who were accused of heresy or apostasy could face severe punishment, including imprisonment, torture, and execution. Many people were falsely accused and suffered terrible fates as a result. The Inquisition continued to operate in Spain until 1834, although its influence and power declined significantly over time. Today, the Spanish government has officially apologized for the Inquisition and the persecution of Muslims and Jews, recognizing it as a dark period in the country's history. When Muslims and Jews were expelled from Spain, they were forced to leave behind their homes, land, and possessions. In many cases, their property was confiscated by the Spanish authorities, and they were not able to take anything with them when they left. This resulted in significant economic and social disruption for these communities, as they were often forced to abandon everything they had worked for and start over in a new place with very little support. The impact of these expulsions is still felt today, as many communities around the world continue to struggle with the legacy of displacement and discrimination that resulted from these events. So what do the Nazis have in common with what happened? The Third Reich was the official name of Nazi Germany from 1933 to 1945, during the rule of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Reich is a German word meaning empire or realm, and the Third Reich was intended to be the successor to the Holy Roman Empire, 962-1806, and the Second Reich, 1871 to 1918. The name Third Reich emphasized the Nazi Party's goal of creating a new, racially pure, and militaristic state that would dominate Europe, and eventually the world. The Third Reich saw the implementation of many policies and programs that were aimed at strengthening the Nazi regime and expanding its power, including the persecution and extermination of Jews and other groups considered undesirable by the regime. Third Reich was the official name of Nazi Germany, and it was chosen by the Nazis as a deliberate reference to earlier German empires, including the Holy Roman Empire and the Second Reich. Many Jews started to leave Germany when the Nazi Party came into power in 1933. The Nazis implemented a series of anti-Semitic laws and policies that made life increasingly difficult for Jews living in Germany. Many Jews faced discrimination, harassment, and violence, and saw their civil rights and property seized by the government. As a result, many Jews chose to leave Germany and seek refuge in other countries. The Jewish people who were persecuted during the Holocaust were primarily of European origin. So were not asked to leave. In contrast, the Jews who lived during the time of the Moors in Spain were primarily of Sephardic origin, who were black and had mixed in with locals. The Holy Roman Empire was a medieval empire that existed in Central Europe from 962 to 1806. It was a complex political entity that evolved over time and included a diverse array of territories and peoples, including Germans, Italians, Czechs, Poles, and others. The relationship between the Holy Roman Empire and the Catholic Church was complex and varied over the centuries, and it depended on the particular rulers and popes involved. At times, there was tension and conflict between the Church and the Empire, such as during the investiture controversy in the 11th and 12th centuries, when there was a power struggle over the appointment of bishops and other church officials. At other times, there was cooperation and collaboration between the two institutions, such as during the Crusades in the 12th and 13th centuries. The Jewish people who were persecuted during the Holocaust were primarily of European origin, and their communities had developed over centuries in different parts of Europe. So the Nazi Party had simply copied what had been done to black Jews and Moors. To once and for all get rid of black influence, the European Jew was a reminder of them, and to stop build-up and keep Europe under full white control, they did what they did and copied tactics that were used before to gain control of Europe. So what do the Nazi and the KKK and Roman Catholic have in common? They all share this same view to rule the world without black influence. This is why black history was denied and not taught in schools. And the blacks of Europe. Well, some did convert to Christianity, but the ones that didn't became a part of the slave trade, and yes, eventually they accepted the new Bible. And most today are happy Christians. This is First Knowledge.